grow my own, 'cause the time is close at hand. Grain for grain, sun and rain, find my way in nature's chain, to my body and my brain, to the music from the land. Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. All it takes is a rake and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, someone bless these seeds I sow. Someone warm them from below till the rain comes tumbling down. Plant your rows straight and long, temper them with prayer and
Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whoever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you love, we welcome you.
Good morning, everyone. Yay. I am Megan Ranciere, and I will be presenting service today along with our guest presenter, Dr. Alan Rogel from the Department of Physics and Astronomy at BGSU. Tina Jones and Steve Israel are providing technical assistance, and Ted Goldman is our music director. Please be aware we are recording this service and it will be posted on our YouTube page. And for privacy, we do not record or post joys and concerns. Also, we save announcements for the end of the service after extinguishing the chalice. So we greet you today as you join us in a wider search for truth and purpose. In this quest, may we encounter one another with open hearts and minds. May we inspire each other to consider new questions and seek deeper meaning. And may we cultivate wisdom and compassion. Let all who enter this place see a welcome face, hear a kind word, and find comfort in this community. May all that we do and say here today help us to be a force for positive change in the world. For those of you who are visiting us for the first time today, welcome. And please note that we are a diverse group with a wide variety of interests and beliefs, and therefore our services are varied in format, tone, and topic. We encourage you to attend or view several services to get a good understanding of our congregation. If you want to start receiving our weekly email of MVUUC news, please write your contact information on the blue information card. Can somebody hold one? Hey, Kevin's got one. Found in the pocket on each chair back. There's a box on the greeting table outside the sanctuary where you can deposit this card after the service. So let's take a minute to greet our neighbors, both new and old. That's a good thing when I have to ring the bowl more than once. Yes. So we're going to move on to lighting our chalice, and the chalice will be lit today by Shannon Jerka. Yay! So please join me in reading the words provided for the lighting of the chalice. Here we go. For the wonder and inspiration we seek from sun and stars, and all the lights of the heavens, we light this chalice. Thank you, Shannon. So next, we're going to have our story for all ages, read by Tina Jones, and today's story is called Eclipse, written by Andy Rash.
Okay. So yeah, Andy Rash wrote this story after the 2017 eclipse. He and his son drove to the Path of Totality, which we are lucky enough to be in right now. And this story was about his experience with his son. And it mirrored my experience driving my kids down to the path. So there's the 2017 Path of Totality that happened. I was in a little town called 96, South Carolina. No idea why it's called 96, but it was a little town. Okay, one more. 2 months ago, I learned there would be a total solar eclipse. The sun would go completely behind the moon, and the moon would cast a shadow on Earth. But to see it happen, I would have to be in the right place at the right time. I decided to make a plan. A month ago, I picked out the perfect place and time to watch the eclipse. At this location, on the Path of Totality, the moon will be totally blocking the sun's light for 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Dad said we could drive there. A week ago, I ordered special dark glasses to protect our eyes when we watch the eclipse. Staring right at the sun would damage our eyes, so wearing official eclipse glasses is important. But first, I tried them out. Kerplunk. Have any of you worn your glasses yet? Yeah? And what do you see when you put them on? Exactly, that's why he fell. All right. And that's how you know they work. A day ago, Dad and I drove down to a campsite so we could wake up close to the Path of Totality. An hour ago, we packed up our stuff to get to the spot I picked out. I really like how the kid's the one organizing everything and putting it in the car, and the dad's just chillaxing and having coffee and eggs. That was me on the day of the eclipse, the one who's prepared. A minute ago, the sun began to hide behind the moon. We barely made it. A second ago, the sun disappeared behind the moon. Now, Dad and I are in the dark. Does anyone see the street light that turned on in the picture? It's way at the top. We take off our special glasses. Sunset colors glow all around. Crickets chirp, dogs bark, street lights turn on. They all think it's nighttime. Now notice they're not looking at the sun though. They're looking at all the nighttime that is suddenly happening during the day. Shimmering rays shine around the moon. I try not to blink. We are in the perfect place at the perfect time. A second from now, the sun will burst out from behind the moon, and we'll put our special glasses back on, and it'll be time to go. Look at the shape of the sun right now. What does it look like? Yeah. It looks like a crescent moon, right? It looks like sometimes our moon does. That's going to be important for the next page. A minute from now, we will see crescent moon-shaped spots of sunlight on the ground as we walk back to the car. So where there's normally shadows, you're going to see little crescent shapes because that's the shape of the sun at that time. An hour from now, we'll be stuck in a big traffic jam going home. I'll be sad the eclipse is over. A day from now, I'll close my eyes and try to remember everything. I'll find out when the next eclipse will happen in the United States. Not for years. A year from now, Dad and I will still talk about what we saw. We won't remember everything, but it will be fun to try. Years from now, we'll go again. And once more, we'll be in the perfect place at the perfect time. They are way in the future. And there's the dark blue one right here. That's what's going to happen tomorrow. And then the next big one that goes across the whole of the United States is going to happen in 2045, 21 years from now. How old will you be? Really old, yeah. Not as old as I will be. How many of you are going to be like 26? 21? 30? Anyone in their 30s? You'll be 30s? Yep, some of you are going to be in your 20s. Boy, you're going to be old. And that is the end. Yay!
Yeah, by the next eclipse, there'll probably be a new generation of folks bringing their kids to the eclipse. Okay, so thank you, Tina. So now is the time for sharing of joys, concerns, and milestones. Tina, please stop recording the service at this time. At MVUUC, we use the element.
Quite difficult. I'll just play a little bit of music with a lot of space in between. And eventually the space will be such that there'll be no more music and we can just sit quietly for a moment and do what we will with our joys and concerns. I think
we're gonna go
I
move
think it's
into a
music now, isn't it?
song. Yeah?
Yes, so
Yeah.
from silence to noise. So we've got 3 sun moon songs today. What I did is rewrote some lyrics for us so that some common sun songs could have moons or eclipses in them. So for instance, at the end, instead of Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles, we'll sing There Goes the Sun, things like that. So we've got 2 to start with. So we've got Oh Mr. Sun, which is a, I think, well-known children's song, but we're going to also sing Oh Mrs. Moon. And the lyrics will be up there for you to follow along with the changes. And then you've got You Are My Sunshine, and that'll have You Are My Moonlight. So we've got sun moon verses for this one. I'll play us a little intro, and then Lisa had an idea that I didn't realize last time. She said pre-COVID, everybody used to stand up to sing. Well, no one told me. So shall we, if we are willing and able, anybody who will rise so we can sing Oh Mr. Sun and Oh Mrs. Moon. Mrs. Moon, Moon, Mrs. Silver Moon, hiding behind a cloud. These little children are asking you to please come out and light up their bedrooms. Oh, Mrs. Moon, Moon, Mrs. Silver Moon, please shine on us now. Oh, Mr. Sun, Sun, Mr. Golden Sun, please shine down on me. Oh, Mr. Sun, Sun, Mr. Golden Sun, hiding behind a tree. These little children are asking you to please come out so we can play with you. Oh, Mr. Sun, Sun, Mr. Golden Sun, please shine down on, please shine down on, please shine down on me. Woo! We've got one more, Megan. Is that okay? Yeah. We're doing both of our songs with the kiddos while they're still here this time. So we're going to do, oh, they're staying. Well, great. Well, we'll do two in a row anyway. This one is You Are My Sunshine, and you'll see again, when we get there, if we switch to the next slide, you'll see You Are My Moonlight. You are my sunshine, okay. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. I hope you'll know, dear, how much I love you. I should mention, my false start, hold on. There's a little story behind this one. You Are My Sunshine is a surprisingly depressing song if you read the lyrics. So the rewrite here is also not just to have moonshine, but also to have some lyrics that you'd actually want to sleep to a kid who's falling asleep. So let's just restart. We'll do a little you redo right there. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. I hope you'll know, dear, how much I love you. Shine, shine on your own way. You are my moonlight, my glowing moonlight. You make me happy when nights are long. I hope you'll know, dear, how much I love you. Shine, shine on all night long. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. I hope you'll know, dear, how much I love you. Shine, shine on your own way. You make my clouds float away. You make my clouds float away. Woo!
Thank you, Ted. For our reflection today, we're fortunate to have as our guest Dr. Alan Rogel, professor of astronomy at BGSU. Dr. Rogel grew up in northern Illinois, attended Amherst College in Massachusetts for his undergraduate studies, then earned his master's at the University of Iowa and his PhD at Indiana University, where he studied close binary star systems. He has a wife and 2 children, and he has lived in Bowling Green since 2005, when he moved here to start his work at BGSU. His presentation today is titled, "A Dragon is Eating the Sun." So please welcome Dr. Alan Rogel.
Works. Okay, so thank you for your kind invitation to come and speak to you about eclipses and the history of them. And as you can see from the title, people have had different interpretations of eclipses for a very long time. And so, next slide, please. So, in early times, and even today, there was a great understanding of the importance of the sun in our daily lives. In particular, in the early farming societies, people were very aware of the importance of sunlight and warmth for growing crops and therefore having food. And this led many societies, in fact, to even worship the sun as a divine being. So imagine what the reaction might be if the sun started to disappear, and in fact would go completely away, leaving simply a black hole in the sky surrounded by a fiery glow. You can imagine that this probably was very terrifying for these early civilizations. And many of them would take this as a fearful omen of upcoming disaster. Because, if the sun is going to go away, that takes life with it. Oftentimes, civilizations interpreted this as some kind of evil or hostile entity trying to devour the sun and remove it. And so a very common reaction would be for people to start screaming and trying to scare, or banging drums, etc., trying to scare away the whatever was trying to consume the sun. And so we're going to look at a few civilizations to see more specifically what their reactions were. The first is China, hence the title of my talk. Their idea was that it was actually a mythical dragon attempting to consume the sun. And of course, this was viewed as a very terrifying experience, as I've said, viewed particularly as a condemnation of the current imperial house. And so the reaction would be, again, go outside and start screaming at the dragon, grab pots and pans, bang them, try to scare it away. And lo and behold, this actually would work. A few minutes later, the dragon might maybe I'll back off here, and eventually an hour later, go away. So, hey, what do you know? It actually works. Next up, we would have the Norse with the two sons of the great wolf Fenrir, Skoll and Hati, which individually were chasing the sun and the moon, again with the attempt to consume them. But again, going out and yelling at them, they would eventually get the message and clear out. Okay, next up is and this is, let me stress, just a sampling of these, some of the more interesting ones. The next one is the Hindu beliefs. And this was an actual interesting one. If you could give me the bottom text, I messed the order up on this slide. The demon Svarbandhu stole a potion of immortality from the great deity Vishnu. Now, Vishnu did not like this. It was like, this wasn't for you. Chased the demon down, cut his head off. The head is Rahu and the body is Ketu. Well, naturally, that wasn't appreciated. And so in retribution for that, since the demon had already consumed the potion of immortality, the head and body did not die. And so they were able to try to take their revenge, which was chase after the and actually go back to where we were, chase back to Rahu, chase the sun, Ketu chased the moon, and again would try to eat them. And every now and then Rahu would catch up with the sun and eat it, and then swallow it. Of course, since there was just a head, when they swallowed it, it went down the neck and came back. So again, we can see interesting cycles of evil entities chasing down the sun, trying to eat it, and either getting scared away or something else happened that always brought the sun back. Some other interpretations The Inuit in the far north actually didn't view this as an evil attack on the sun, but simply that the sun had gotten sick. It's not feeling well. And so to avoid catching the same illness as the sun had, the Inuit would essentially hide. They'd go inside, shut the door, shut the windows, not look at the sun, and then the sun would get better and then all would be good. The Ojibwe, a Native American tribe near the Great Lakes, had the idea that the sun was a great ball of fire, burning material, and once in a while that flame would just go out. And so the need there was for the Ojibwe to fire flaming arrows at the sun. Eventually one would get high enough to trigger the sun to catch on fire again. So they, as opposed to hiding, would go outside and start shooting arrows at the sun. Hopefully not landing on anything too valuable. Some people groups took a completely different view, however, that it was not a direct negative omen or evil entities happening, but there was some other means of communication between the divine and the humans. The Celts simply realized that this was an alignment of the sun and moon. They were advanced in this, that they actually knew that it was simply the moon got in front of the sun. But with that alignment, this enabled opened a spiritual doorway to allow much more direct communication between humanity and their deities during the time of the solar eclipse. The Dine, more commonly known as Navajo, actually view time in a much different way than we do in Western society. They've got a much more cyclic view of time as opposed to our sort of linear concepts. And so in their view, a solar eclipse is kind of a resetting of the solar cycle and a rebirth of the sun. And so it's a solemn time, and they will typically go into their houses and meditate. In fact, in the 2017 eclipse, the 2023 annular eclipse that went right across the Navajo lands, they actually shut down their parks and didn't have the national parks open that they normally would because they were inside meditating instead. And so it's not an evil time, it's simply a time of meditation on the rebirth of the sun. And the Pacific Island group, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce, actually this is a kind of funny one because they had the view that this was simply a message from the deities that there was too much debate and argument and conflict on the earth. And so, in effect, the deities would make the sun go away to send a message, hey, shut up, quit arguing with yourselves, chill out, and make peace. And so it's just a message from the gods to try to become a more peaceful society and settle debates. Okay, the thing about all of these societies is, especially early on, none of them had any concept that the solar eclipses would occur in patterns, that there was any sort of regularity to a solar eclipse. Instead, it was just a completely random event. Now we know that they are actually predictable and periodic, but why was it that the early civilizations could not figure this out in most cases? Well, that gets to actually how eclipses work. And here you've probably seen these diagrams by now. How many of you have seen a diagram like this? Most of you. The idea is basically to have an eclipse happen, we have the, sorry, my laser pointer is going a little haywire. Okay, we have the sun casting a shadow with the moon between the earth and the sun, and the moon's shadow lands on the earth. Now, since the sun is much bigger than the moon, there's only a small region of the earth that is going to get in the full shadow. Next slide, please. So this is actually a video taken from the Discover spacecraft that's about 1 million miles closer to the sun than the Earth is, and is in an orbit such that it basically stays there. And this is looking back towards the Earth, and we can see this shadow moving across the Earth. The key point here for the ancient civilizations is if we have a civilization in Australia, it's not going to see this because the shadow path is up here. This is different from a lunar eclipse where the shadow of the Earth lands on the moon. The entire side of the Earth facing the moon can notice that effect. And so while solar and lunar eclipses are actually as frequent, so you get as many solar eclipses as you get lunar eclipses, as viewed from a location, one location, that location is going to see half of the solar or the lunar eclipses, but a very, very small fraction of the solar eclipses. So this starts to explain there's problems of being able to see the eclipses, because most of them we just don't see. Now, we can predict eclipses, and certain of the early civilizations were in fact able to do that. And this is based on the fact that eclipses are in fact predictable. There's only 2 times a year that we can get the possibility of an eclipse. And this is because if we think about the Earth's orbit around the sun, mapping out this circle here, imagine that being the surface of a pool of water. So the Earth is constantly floating in this pool, surrounded as orbits the sun, also floating in our imaginary pool. The moon's orbit around the Earth does not stay exactly within that pool. Instead, it is tilted 5 degrees out of the plane of the pool. We call it the plane of the ecliptic. So much of the time, the moon is above the surface of the water or below the surface of the water. And so if it hits its new phase, which is when it's as close as possible to between the sun and the Earth, but is above the surface of the pool, the shadow just misses. Similarly, if it's below the surface of the pool, again, the shadow's going to miss. It's only here and here where the moon is right on the surface at the same time as it is in new phase that we can get a solar eclipse. So there's only these 2 times, we call them eclipse seasons, each year that we can have the possibility of an eclipse at all. If you go to the next slide, we can just kind of see the side view here. And of course, this diagram is extremely foreshortened. The actual distances are much larger, and the eclipse is the shadow cone is much longer and thinner. But it gives you the general idea. Yeah, the moon shadow just flat out misses the Earth, and the Earth shadow misses the moon if we're at where the tilt is, but in the eclipse season, we actually can manage to land the shadows onto the other bodies. This leads us to an ability to predict the eclipses through what is known as the Saros cycle. It's a pattern of recurring eclipses, and it's simply based on recording when eclipses have occurred in the past and teasing out those patterns. Now, if you're at a very small location on the Earth and your tribal group doesn't cover much territory, as we indicated, you're not going to see most of the eclipses. However, as society has started to spread out and gained information from a larger region, they were able to start to see the patterns. Even though they still weren't seeing many of the eclipses, they were getting enough of them to see the patterns. The Chaldean astronomers, Second Babylonian Empire, were the first to do this, figured out that pattern, and that information then led to the Greek astronomers knowing about it. Also, Chinese astronomers were able to figure out this pattern. Okay, so moving on to the Saros cycle. Yes. As I said, eclipses can only happen in these 2 places here. But the thing is, the moon isn't necessarily in its new moon phase when it's here, because the period of time it takes the Earth to go around the sun is not an even multiple of the length of time it takes the moon to go around the Earth. So we might be in this alignment, but the moon's over here, no eclipse. And so to get the full cycle of repeat, it actually takes 223 lunar orbits around the Earth to get back to the point that we're at the same alignment like this. So that gives us a cycle of 18 years, 11 days, plus or minus 1, depending on our leap year count, and 8 hours to get back to essentially the same configuration. And so if there is an eclipse tomorrow, there will be another eclipse in 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. And this we know, this cycle will repeat. Okay, next slide, please. Now the problem is, it's not going to occur here. Because of that pesky 8 hours, the Earth has rotated a third of the way around, so instead of occurring, and this is going backwards in time, the one serocycle back, the eclipse happened, going the wrong way, back here in Africa and Asia. 2 cycles ago, we were out in the Pacific, and so you have to go 3 cycles ago, back to 1970. I don't know if any of you saw that eclipse, but 1970, March 7, was the serocycle equivalent, but 3 cycles ago, that might have been was able to be seen from North America. And so often, the ancient civilizations, they were able to tease out this 54-year cycle, skipping the 2 in the middle. Now, there's an interesting fact there. We don't only get eclipses in one, we don't have to wait 18 years for the next solar eclipse. And that's because that plane of the moon's orbit around the Earth wobbles. And so instead of having to wait for all 223 lunar months, there's other times, other eclipse seasons will develop as that plane pivots, giving us a potential for other setups that will also give us lunar eclipses. So halfway, a quarter of the way around, if we just wait for the lunar orbit to wobble enough, we'll see an eclipse there. This is actually a map of time, a year and month of all the solar eclipses that will happen over the next roughly 20 years. And we can see the drift, this drift to earlier, that's due to that wobble. And so every year you can see we get eclipses in the 2 seasons. Occasionally one season will actually manage to eke out 2 eclipses. This would probably be like almost at the North Pole, almost at the South Pole. There's a just barely, the shadow just barely eclipse. And then click again. But a full serocycle, one more click. There and there, that's the pairing for the 18-year, 11-day eclipse. So there's actually a lot of different eclipse patterns that we're seeing. But they all follow the 18-year serocycle. Okay, so this enabled certain cultures to predict my name tag came off. Predict position of the moon and sun, and therefore they were able to predict the eclipses. But it turned out that the Chinese astronomers in particular were able to develop another technique that instead of just looking into the past and trying to say, well, we see a repeat cycle, so it'll keep going, they were able to look into the future and project into the future, because this enabled the emperor to tell his people, hey, there is a solar eclipse, the dragon is coming on such and so date, be prepared with your drums and pots and pans to go out and scare it away. And then when the solar eclipse came and they succeeded, that was viewed as a sign of the divinity of the emperor himself. Now, of course, if he didn't predict it, that was viewed as a sign that the gods no longer favored that dynasty and that the dynasty maybe should end. Not something the emperor wanted. So the emperor relied on imperial astronomers to predict the motions of the moon and the sun in the sky, and this formed the basis of the calendars for China. New calendars are really only developed if it became obvious that the positions predicted had become too far off, or a new dynasty came along, because the new dynasty always wanted to show how it was the proper divine dynasty and the previous were all heretics, and so they tended to kind of destroy anything, including the people who had developed the technology from the previous dynasty. So, astronomers in China were able to start to figure out how to predict eclipses into the future. An interesting little caveat on this was because if they didn't predict an eclipse, the emperor did not like that, and that typically meant end of the line, end of your career, end of your life. But the emperors weren't as irritated if astronomers predicted an eclipse and it didn't happen. They tended to predict a few more than actually were going to happen. Because if an eclipse was predicted and then didn't happen, the emperor could simply say that his personal divinity scared the dragon off and it never even came. So they were started predicting in 237 Common Era, improved over time, until by 1300 they were able to predict timings within half an hour, which is actually about as accurate as their clocks were. So they were able to do it quite well. Now, how did they do this? The Maya may have also been able to predict eclipses into the future in this way as well. So how did they do this? Well, map the stars on the sky. That gives our basic coordinate system in effect. And then plot the position of the moon over time with respect to the stars. The moon moves roughly 13 degrees west to east across the stars every day. And you can imagine this isn't that hard to do because you can actually see the stars and the moon at the same time. So it's not too hard to go out at a specific time, put a dot on the sky of here, on your chart representing the stars, here's the moon. Okay, next slide. Of course, for an eclipse, we need to figure out when the moon and the sun are in the same place, so we also have to do the same thing for the sun, and this was the challenging one. The sun moves only about a degree west to east across the stars per day, and of course, with the exception of during a solar eclipse, you cannot see stars and the sun in the sky at the same time. But the Chinese and Maya were able to develop techniques that they were able to figure out where the sun was with respect to the stars, even without being able to see them at the same time. And one way to potentially do this, first off, is map out where the sun is when it sets. Just map out its north-south coordinate, wait a fixed known amount of time, and see what star had set at that same place. And so essentially the star would be over, actually say on that previous slide, the star over here, you'd say, well, this is a given amount of time. And so if the sun is at the same angle on the horizon as this star, and we know the time interval, then we can position the sun in its proper place. Or we could use the horizon point and distance it was from the moon at the time it set, because you can see the sun and moon in the sky at the same time, and use those two measurements to get the positions. And so now, next slide, if we could track this, watch the moon moving, and here comes the sun, if they happen to be at the same place at the same time, then here comes an eclipse. So that was the techniques they developed. Today, it's a little bit more detailed. On the next slide, I've got some of the computations or some of the inputs to it. We can predict forward for hundreds of years when these eclipses will happen, and we can predict them to a very high degree of accuracy. As you've probably seen, you can look up in, Maumee, the eclipse totality will range from this, 3, 14, 37, whatever, I didn't look up the actual time, but it's down to the second knowing when the eclipse will start and stop for totality. And this is based simply on our knowing how the planets move and the moon moves with respect to the Earth and Sun. But then other things we have to take into account, well, average distance, how its distance changes over time, because none of the objects stay in a perfectly circular orbit, staying exactly the same distance. So sometimes, for example, the moon's a little bit farther from the Earth, and therefore the spot of totality is smaller, because that shadow cone, less of it actually gets to the Earth. In fact, if the moon is as far away as it can be, the point of the totality shadow cone does not get to the Earth. And that gives us the ring or annular eclipse. And then the Earth is at different distances from the sun by maybe 1%, which changes the apparent size of the sun, which will alter the size of the totality spot. The moon is moving away from the Earth at 4 centimeters per year, and so that's going to change the apparent size of the moon. Other planets will tug on both the moon and the Earth, change their orbits. You have to worry about for timing for a particular location on the Earth. We have to figure out rotation rate of the Earth, which changes a little bit due to all sorts of things. Where you are, and the fact that the Earth's rotation axis wobbles around also contributes. So there's a lot of factors we take into account, but we have very successfully done so. On the next slide, I've got a map of major solar eclipses into the next 10 or so years. Here's our current one. That happens tomorrow. The next one is down here. I think it's this one. Might be that one. I'm not quite sure which from this angle. But that happens down in Chile and Argentina. That's just in October. So the next eclipse season, there's where the solar eclipse is. We actually have no prominent ones in 25. Probably they're both partial eclipses, because just the moon is just barely being able to clip the Earth with its shadow. But then you can see there's pairs 2 in 26, 2 in 27, 2 in 28, 2 in 2030, and so forth. The next one visible here in Ohio, 2099. We'll have a great view because the track actually goes right through northwest Ohio, but I don't know if any of us will be around to see it. The next one in the US is actually in 2044 in Montana and North Dakota. 2045 is the next big one to sweep across a good part of the country. And then finally, if you haven't already made plans for tomorrow, we're having our solar eclipse watch party at the Deutsch football stadium tomorrow. Gates open, I think it's at noon. Check the website for details. We'll be handing out eclipse glasses if you don't already have them, as long as supplies last. I will be there, and it will have a big event watching the eclipse for the whole hour of ingress, where the partial is getting bigger, the 3 minutes of totality, and then the hour out. There will be bands, food trucks, you name it, we'll have it. So, thank you.
Thank you again to Dr. Rogel for that amazing lesson on not just the science of solar eclipse, but also the cultural history of how, human societies have viewed them and interpreted them. And just as a really short UU principles connection, I just wanted to say that, today's presentation helps us to connect with our 7th principle, to honor the interdependent web of life, of which we are a very tiny part, and I think the solar eclipse reminds us of that. The eclipse is a stark reminder of how incredibly tiny we are as individuals, and how absolutely we depend on our shared planet, on the regular cycles of wind and water, the orbits of the sun and the moon, and on the life-giving power of the sun itself. Similar to the overview effect that astronauts experience when gazing down on the Earth from space, the eclipse tomorrow can lead us to a greater appreciation for our planet and our obligation to care for it, and a deep connection to humanity as a whole. I hope tomorrow's celestial events give us a sense of awe and wonder, and a chance to contemplate the movement of the galaxy around us and how incredibly rare and special it is for life to exist and thrive on our tiny blue dot called Earth. And now we will pass our offertory basket really quickly. All donations are gratefully welcomed. If you make automatic pledge payments, please place one of the plastic yellow cards indicating this support in the basket. Thank you, thank you. And Ted, would you mind playing a quick offertory? Thanks. Thank you, Ted. So now we will extinguish our chalice. Please read with me. Join me in reading the words provided for extinguishing our chalice. Here we go. Together, we have enjoyed the warmth and beauty of stories of this flame and of this special community. As our chalice flame is extinguished, we can still remember that its glow is carried within us. We can use our inner lights and this flame to kindle new sparks throughout our lives and in the world. May the spirit of peace and togetherness bless your lives. Thank you. So now is the time for announcements. Does anyone have any announcements? Okay, go ahead, Buffy.
For any of you who are not attending an event and/or have failed to already purchase your solar eclipse glasses, I had some extras and I brought them and they are on the table. So help yourself, but don't take more than you need because I haven't checked with friends and neighbors back home, but I've got some extra ones if you're going to need them for tomorrow.
And those are on the front greeting table.
I have two quick announcements. One, blood drive, April 27th, 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. I could use the donors, so please see me if you'd like to sign up, or you can go online and sign up. I also wanted to let you know that our own Mackenzie, who is the assistant in RE, is going to be in a show at her school, Maumee Valley Country Day, thank you. April 18th through the 21st, and she wanted me to make sure that we invited everyone to go see that. There's a poster by the coffee, and it tells you how to get tickets and things like that.
And I just have one announcement. I'll just say it. On May 12th, we're having a variety show as our service, May 12th. So if you have any talent, a talent of any size or description, if you would love to share that with a very supportive audience, please see me and sign up because we would love to have more participants. Thank you. Oh, yeah, thank you. I will.
We started our open circle discussion group this morning and had a great turnout. Thank you, everybody who got up a little early, a gorgeous day. It was not too bad to get out and about. We started by doing an interest survey for topic areas, and I'm going to take these out and pin them on the bulletin board, and if you would be willing to take one and give it to me and just fill it. It just gives a topic area, current events and social issues, and you just indicate, is it of high interest, low interest, you'll see. And no name necessary, we're just trying to get the pulse of what people are interested in. And we'll be back next week at 10 o'clock.
Yes. All right. Sorry, Winnie reminded me I did have a second announcement. Pledge forms, yay! If you haven't submitted your pledge form, please do so. There are printed copies on the greeting table, and you can fold it up and put it in this beautiful rainbow-colored box. And we thank you in advance. Thank you very much. Closing song. After the closing song, we invite everybody to stay for potluck. And now Ted will lead us in the closing song.
So not Here Comes the Sun, but There Goes the Sun. So just keep your eyes out for the changes.
Thank you, everyone, and enjoy potluck. Yeah!